Shibaraku deshita. Back after quite a long absence to talk about a couple of things that have happened in the past month or so since the Q&A video. The interview with Big Rat, I did better than I thought I would in unscripted conditions, but even still, after it was over, I did find myself thinking about all the stuff that I could have phrased better and stuff that I was vague and jumpy on. This is why scripting works better for me, but he didn't want to send the questions in advance and he had a good reason for it, so what can I say? The interview does have a lot of talk about early 2000s WWE and childhood reactions to it and that sort of stuff. I haven't talked too much about that on this channel, so people who have been subscribed for a while might find that interesting. I would say for any of Big Rat subscribers who've never heard of me, I wouldn't necessarily say that the interview is a perfect introduction. It's good, but I don't think they'll necessarily get a great overview of what I'm about and why I say the things I say. I think there are some videos on this channel where I do a better job of that. That's just my opinion. But there is still some good stuff there, so I would say it's worth checking out whenever he does put it up. And he suggested that since there are no audio complications, that it would go up fairly quickly. So there's that. As far as future videos are concerned, other than talking about the best of 2011, I did mention that I wanted to get back to the top 10 matches of a certain wrestler series. That was on hold for a while. There was a period where I wasn't sure which wrestler to focus on next, but someone did impress enough to prompt me to look further into his career, and that was Fujinami Tatsumi. And if you've never seen him, wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I hadn't seen any of his prime performances until a few weeks ago. But the prime performance that I did see was impressive enough for me to watch more stuff. Basically, for those who might not know, Fujinami was one of the New Japan's top guys in the 1980s. And the more of his stuff I watch, the more I am assuring myself that even though he doesn't have the longevity of some other guys, even the 3 other guys that I've done lists of so far, I think Fujinami might have one of the best primes that I've seen of anyone so far. I really, really like what I'm seeing of him in that area. So his top 10 matches should be uploaded in a few weeks' time. Right now, I want to share the results of the best of WWE in 2011 that we have just finished putting together on the ProWrest.tv forums. For 2011, basically we have a 3-list format. One of them is WWE, the other one is Japan, and the last is everything that isn't Japan or the WWE. And basically I'm going to go through my WWE list and compare my match order to the order that you can see on the overall list. I'll put the details in the description box. You can see the difference. The overall list represents the consensus result after 12 people in total submitted their match lists, and they were taken into account. It's actually more participation than at least I was expecting, to be honest. But I guess with the WWE, people are going to be watching the big matches, even if they are not always voting yes or no to them in our voting threads throughout the year. I would imagine that we're not going to get quite as many ballots for the lists representing lesser known matches, but with any luck we will hold steady in that department. So if anyone's watching and wants to get involved in the 2 lists that are still yet to be compiled, it is definitely not too late. And once they are finished, I will hopefully be doing similar videos for both of those. So let's get down to this one. And the first thing I'd say that it's definitely not an accident that the WWE is the only promotion that we give a separate voting category for individually. That in itself says something about their consistency in the ring. I did only end up submitting a 15 match ballots where most people submitted 20. There were other matches that I did like, but I have a certain sense of how good I want a match to be before I put it on a best of list. There's nothing shameful about a top 15 to me. It tells you that every match I have on there on that list I thought was deserving enough to be immortalized in a small way, in whatever small way I can manage to immortalize it. So that's how I'd characterize it. Number 15, I had Christian versus Orton from Over the Limit. This was their second match and their first on pay-per-view. Basically, like I've said before, these guys don't go for the long segments of control. And I think when you work a match that way and you do it well, like these guys do, you're going to peak quickly. So you don't want to make the match go longer than it needs to just to make it seem important. At least, I don't think the match is any better off for it. And that's kind of what I was getting from this. And the spear tributes are also a bit cheesy, I think. But when these guys are just very good at teasing their finishers and making a lot of the sequences feel very unpredictable and competitive. So in the end, I did feel good about rounding off my list with this match. It did place quite a bit higher on the overall list, but I think these guys' matches are built along similar lines, so it's pretty interchangeable when it comes to your favorite meeting of these two. Number 14 for me was Mark Henry versus Sheamus from SummerSlam. I actually think this is marginally better than the matches against Big Show that got more support in the overall list and basically left this match towards the bottom. But I think the Sheamus match feels like a more complete version of the Henry Show match from Money in the Bank and avoids some of the gaps in logic that the Vengeance match between Henry and Show succumbed to set up the huge spots. The huge spots are great, but there were some logic gaps, I think. Sheamus, on the other hand, he might have been more interesting to me, Sheamus, actually, just as a babyface than Big Show, just because Sheamus is just smaller. And he can hold his own in a brawl against the Monster Henry, and they have a finish that makes both guys look great. You know, months later, you can see how that helps in its own little way, I guess. Number 13 for me was the triple threat match from Monday Night Raw. That was Punk versus Del Rio versus Mysterio. And if memory serves me right, this is the match where Punk earned the right to challenge Cena at Money in the Bank. And basically this match, it's a 10-minute spot fest where they do not slow down for a second. And they had some interesting tension built over Del Rio's armbar finisher. And Mysterio's 619 setups are pretty damn great, to be honest. Triple threat rules means that it's a bit easier, I think, to work exciting near falls based on whether you decide to have the guy being pinned kick out or whether you have the third guy break up the pin altogether. You know, they took advantage of that to make this an exciting match. It didn't make top 15 for the overall list, but it did make top 20, which I think is a fine result. So that one's there. Number 12 for me was the Smackdown Elimination Chamber from last February. Basically the main thing that's a source of quality, a constant source of quality in this match is Rey Mysterio. I'm going to sing his praises yet again. He is a master of taking bumps and showing vulnerability, and that shines through in all its glory in this chamber match. He's in there for the whole time, which definitely helps the rating a little bit. This match is also a good indicator, I think, of the quality difference between workers that might appear similar on the surface. You know, I would say Big Show's a good worker, but Kane is not. And you can tell the difference here in the varying levels of energy that they brought to the match when they leave their chamber pods. You know, Big Show carries momentum with him when he comes in, starts crushing guys and showing some charisma while he's doing it. Just a shame that they had to go for the laziest, you know, back-to-back finisher routine to eliminate him from the match. It's a shame, but I would still say that you got a good sense of what makes Big Show good for the time that he was in there. The match ends with Edge versus Rey. Probably goes a little bit too long, but they have some good sequences packed in there. This match fell just outside the top 15 for the overall Progress.tv list. It lost out to Edge versus Ziggler from the Rumble. I guess people will disagree on who the best guy was at that time to work around Edge's physical limitations and deliver something good. There you go. Going on to number 11, that was Punk. For me, that was Punk versus Cena from SummerSlam. Everyone remembers this, obviously, as their second match. Interesting to see, I think, that they actually worked better on the mat the second time around, even though they didn't have the big STF into Anaconda Vice switch that they had in the Money in the Bank match. Other than that, Punk is very good at making the match feel special by interrupting Cena's trademark moves. You know, the finisher training towards the end isn't as good as the previous match, but the match does end more or less at the right time, which makes it somewhat enjoyable to watch. This placed third on the overall list, actually, which shocked the hell out of me. I'm really not sure how anyone could have enjoyed it that much. Part of me thinks that some people are just kind of still seduced by how powerful the CM Punk angle was at that time. But, you know, I wouldn't call it the most overrated match on this list. It's just kind of a surprise to see it placed so high. That's how I would see it. Now we're getting into the top 10, starting with the triple threat cage match for the WWE Championship from Extreme Rules. Cena versus Miz versus Morrison. Again, I'd say a triple threat format is absolutely an asset, even in gimmick matches, because it's just easier this way to keep the outcome an unpredictable and tense affair. Here you had Morrison, who was fast enough to escape the cage at lightning speed, and Miz, who would try to sneak out when the others were distracted. So it keeps the outcome at the surface of your mind when you're watching this, and you're basically interested the whole way through. Cena had a very good record for delivering in the big match in 2011, actually. This was actually, I think, one of his weaker big match performances, as I recall. But he does contribute well to the finish, and they incorporate the door as an escape mechanism very well, again, to keep you guessing, again, as to who's going to win. It's a strong title match that I think deserves a lot more support. Didn't even make the top 20 in the overall list. It's a shame. An underrated match for the WWE in last year, definitely. Number 9 for me was Randy Orton versus Mark Henry from Night of Champions. This is where Henry wins the World Heavyweight Championship, and he puts himself over to perfection in this match. The only thing holding this back from going even further up is Orton's inability or general unwillingness to make a comeback without no selling the match. It's something that you'll see from him time and time again. But I will, though, give Orton credit for setting up the apron DDT really well and giving the match a good near fall. But otherwise, this is the Mark Henry show. You know, one of his best performances all year, and it placed in almost the same position on the overall list. So it's pretty much consensus quality. Henry mannerisms, offense, big moments. Can't say much more than that, I guess. Going on to number 8, I had the TLC triple threat for the WWE Championship. The Miz versus Del Rio versus Punk. I think this might have actually got more support, I think, if it hadn't happened so late in the year, because there's actually some creative stuff in here in terms of, Punk and the handcuffs. That was interesting. I mean, first it's a liability, then it's a weapon, then it's a liability again. Interesting stuff. And then there's some crazy bumps in here as well. That's where Rodriguez deserves credit. And what is the difference between this match and the 2011 Smackdown Money in the Bank match, which I do not like, and I will still say that it is the most overrated match that ended up on the overall top 5. Del Rio gets to stand out in this match. That's the difference. He takes out both guys with that armbar. This all goes back to my whole exceptionalism idea that I talked about in the last video. Multi-man spot vests can really benefit from it. I really can't have any explanation as to why the SmackDown Money in the Bank placed so high in the overall list. The two guys they try to focus on in that match, Sheamus and Sin Cara, their momentum doesn't last as long as compared to the guys in this match. It's a hell of a better match, I think. Number 7 for me was Daniel Bryan versus William Regal from Superstars in November. Regal's facial expressions and body language are tremendous, and the way he toys with Bryan when they're exchanging holds, and take a look at the way he sells Bryan's diving knee. That's a visual I think anyone can enjoy, and it's what makes that transition interesting to me. And when Bryan's in control, he acknowledges Regal's seniority by going for the leg. Regal sells it beautifully. They basically show you everything that makes these guys great, and they accomplish it without wasting any of your time. I think it's a quality match. Didn't make the top 10 in the overall list, but I do think it's a strong statement of how good a match it is that it finished ahead of Undertaker versus Triple H from WrestleMania. A match that tried so hard to do so much and ended up accomplishing very, very little. I'd like to use the expression less is more, but I don't think Bryan versus Regal is giving you any less. I think they're showing you right there and then what makes these guys great workers. So that's how I'd say it. Let's go on to number 6, where again we have Daniel Bryan, and this time against Mark Henry in the cage from SmackDown. Probably the most competitive atmosphere you're going to get in a cage match, unless you take the brutality to horrifying levels. That approach can work, and it can work very well, but these guys get more drama out of cage escapes than most of us can hope to ever do. Look at how Bryan tries to kill the threat with the Hurricane Rana, and then is right back to climbing the cage when that doesn't work. That sort of attention to detail is what makes these cage escapes so exciting. And as well as that, Bryan takes some great bumps in this match. Didn't really buy into his submissions that much as potential match enders. I'm not sure why, but he is still great at moving from move to move when he needs to and improving his position. So I'm not saying it's a total loss. And the finish we get is a decisive Henry Slam. And yeah, it's a show. It's two great workers taking a TV match much further than you'd ever imagine it could go. It's just a shame that there won't be a championship match at Mania. Sheamus is a good choice, don't get me wrong. He's better than Orton without a doubt, but he's still no Mark Henry. It's a lost dream, I guess. Now we go for the top 5. First, we have Christian versus Del Rio, ladder match at Extreme Rules. This is where Christian won the championship, obviously. Rare case of me not liking a match the first time around for no reason that I could figure out, and going back and liking it a lot more the second time around. Notice this time on this match that they're not going for that predictable spot where both guys are trading blows from opposite sides of the ladder. They throw the ladder off balance and then they both go down. It's usually not a competitive spot, and it's been done enough times to the point where I really don't need to see it that much anymore. These guys are better at keeping it smart, trying to keep to their advantages. One spot I particularly liked in that regard was Del Rio getting thrown over the ropes but managing to hang on to the apron. Other than that, there's some good bumps, some effective interference, and a feel-good finish. This came second in the overall list, which I actually quite liked because it showed the power of consensus. This is the only match other than the overall winner, which everyone agreed was worthy of best of list. This match got 12 votes out of a maximum of 12 votes, so that statistic alone was strong enough to propel it to second place. It seems like the right thing it should be. That a match that everyone agrees on should place so high. So I had no complaints about it getting the second place honours. Number 4, I had Orton versus Christian from Smackdown. This is their first match. I think it's their best match. It has all the finisher teasing that they do so well, and the short time helps keep it exciting for the duration. Orton isn't that fast, but in cases like that, he needs to be brutal to make up for it, and that's what he brought to this one. It made my top 5, it made the overall top 10. There's no reason to complain about that, so let's move on. Number 3, top 3. First up, we had Cena versus Mysterio, the night after Money in the Bank from Monday Night Raw. More people need to be talking about this match, is all I can say. If there's anyone better than Punk at breaking off Cena's standard sequences, the 5-knuckle shuffle, the spin-out powerbomb, that stuff, Punk's good at interrupting it and, putting his own unique stamp on the match, but Mysterio might be better at doing that, is all I can say. And again, I bring up Mysterio's setups for the 619. There's a really good one in this match that is aided by, Cena's selling of the knee. Cena's counters are great. They're all strength-based, and to acknowledge the size difference, and it helps Ray look credible in a sense. And then Cena gets very nasty actually with the execution. To be honest, stiff-looking powerbomb, leg drop, and so on. Great match is all I can say, and it's one that I think more people on this website need to talk about, to be honest. And in second place, I had Miz versus Morrison, the Falls Count Anywhere match from the first Raw of 2011. A more decisive finish than any match below it, I'd say. And it's as strong as it is because of the way Morrison teases the Starship pin for the lead up to it. I mean, Miz kicks out once, so you have good reason to take it to another level by using the table. And such a tragic thing that it doesn't work, But Morrison looks like a badass for trying. Miz is tough for kicking out of the Starship pin the first time, and he gets a believable escape with the title to, uphold the cowardly heel thing he had going on. Both guys look stronger coming after this match. Aside from the finish, there's some great struggle for some of the other bumps in here as well. Steel barricade for one example, and overall smartly worked match with crazy bumps. When you manage to get that combination down, that must mean they're good workers. That's all I can say. That was number 2. Number 1 for both my list and the overall list is not a surprise. I think the number 1 spot is a bit more interesting, I think, for the Japanese and the miscellaneous lists. This one was pretty much a no-brainer. Cena versus Punk from Money in the Bank. After a second watch, it's still not 5 stars. I definitely don't think it's 5 stars, but these guys trade finishes a hell of a lot more cohesively than Undertaker and Triple H do. And they feature a huge submission switch with the FU into the Anaconda device. They have one run-in that adds so much. Everyone's said enough about this match already. I'll just say that for me it was this match and not Punk's first promo that got me interested in the whole Summer of Punk thing. I think the effect of the match is just far stronger. Maybe it's just because I don't care about him name dropping Ring of Honor or anything like that, but that is how I feel about it. I think the match is a far stronger representation of what that whole the whole Summer of Punk thing was about. But that's how I feel about it. That is our representation altogether of the best of the WWE in 2011. In about a month, you will get a similar video for the miscellaneous list, and in about 2 months, it'll be the Japan list. And hopefully somewhere in between there, I'll be talking about Fujinami Tatsumi as well. So that is the agenda. I will see you when I see you.